Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's CITI program webinar. Today's topic is Field Research Safety, Assessing and Managing Risk, and is presented by Mr. Alex Derr. Now, let me tell you about today's presenter. Alex is an environmental policy expert, climber, and outdoor educator based in Denver, Colorado. With more than a decade of experience in the backcountry and participation in multiple field research projects in winter and alpine environments, he's passionate about helping others learn to stay safe in the outdoors. He has been climbing and camping in the backcountry for more than a decade with 70 plus ascents above 13,000 feet. Alex has engaged in field research during all 4 seasons while earning his Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Study at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He spent further time conducting research in the alpine environments while working on his master's thesis at the University of Colorado, Denver. For certificates in wilderness first aid and leave no trace ethics, Alex has been helping others learn to safely explore the outdoors for nearly a decade. And now I'm going to pass the mic to Alex.
And we're here to talk about some important concepts of risk management and mitigation during field research, whether that's in an alpine environment like I've dealt with here in Colorado, or whether it's something I experienced back in Wisconsin growing up a little closer to home, but not necessarily less risky, depending on what you're doing and when. So the big 4 learning objectives that we're going to be covering today. First, understanding some of these overall key concepts, things like hazards, risk tolerance, what they mean and why they're important in this context specifically. Then we'll talk about how to identify the hazards that are commonly present in a field research environment, and as well as breaking that down into various categories. The third big piece will be learning to assess the risk that is posed by each of these hazards we identify, and then analyzing them, looking at the severity and the likelihood of these impacts. Those are the 2 big pieces of risk that we'll be discussing more. And then lastly, acting on all of that, we'll learn how to develop a risk management plan that is appropriate for your level of risk tolerance and utilizes safety best practices. One of the key concepts you really have to understand, though, is this differentiation between a hazard and a risk, because I think a lot of people use these terms very interchangeably, but they're quite specific in terms of what they mean. There are also social and psychological hazards I mentioned. And I would say, especially if you're doing research in a culture that's very different from your own, or in a place that has a lot of political instability, those social hazards can be far greater sometimes than the environmental hazards. My tolerance level for risk, what I consider high risk and low risk, is inherent to me and my experiences, and is probably different from what you might consider high risk or low risk. One step that you should always go through when you are assessing risk is to figure out what is that risk tolerance for you and for your team. As I said, you should always have a risk tolerance level decided on, so that as you are working through your hazards, you can always bring it back and compare it against some ultimate score. You may decide things that are below a certain level are considered managed for your team, and that you don't really need to do anything additional to control for those.
I invite you to review our content offerings regularly, as we are continually adding new courses and webinars in various areas of research, ethics, compliance, EHS, professional development throughout the year. In particular, you might be interested in our Safe Research Environment course, as well as some of our other EHS courses, such as Laboratory Chemical Safety. And that concludes our webinar. Have a wonderful day.